Welcome, everybody, to the Vital Voices Live podcast. Great to have... Wow, Sara Blakely, you really bring out a crowd. Let me just let you all know what this podcast is, because it's dedicated to celebrating game changers, the rule breakers, and the fearless women who are shaping our world. All of you are here for that, right? And I'm so thrilled to be in front of this live audience with my good friend, Sara Blakely, a true innovator, a true visionary, an entrepreneur, a champion for women everywhere. I think you all know the Spanx story, right? Who here is wearing Spanx? Come on.
I love it. You can flash me later.
Yes. She revolutionized the fashion industry with that idea and with her true grit, and then became the first self-made female billionaire selling that. It's really incredible. But of course, Sara Blakely did not stop there. She has used her power and influence to champion women everywhere, invest in other women businesses, and prove that lifting up other women is the ultimate power move.
Yes.
Bold, brilliant, and here to share her incredible story with all of us, Sara Blakely. So good to see you again.
So good to see you, Norah, and see all these amazing, beautiful faces here. Thanks for coming out, guys. Oh, I see Sneex in the aisle already.
I was just going to say,
woo! I love
that's
it.
the thing about hanging with Sara Blakely, is that either people are pulling down part of their outfit to show their Spanx.
So true.
Or now lifting up their pants to show their Sneex.
Right. My husband jokes and says it's a perk from being married to me, because like he stands next to me and women are just like, oh, you're this Spanx girl? Look at my bra. Look at my panties. You know, he's just like, whoa. But I have to say, I got my mom and my daughter here. So there's 3 generations here today. And, you know, Norah, people ask me all the time, they're like, Sara, you know, has your success hit you? It's very interesting. It hits me in moments and unexpected moments. But you just did the intro and my mom was crying. So I feel like, you know, that I could tell she just had that moment like, wow, wait, that's my daughter, which is so cool. And I'm so grateful to you, Mom, for all the support and love that you gave me. And then, of course, Tepper, I got her out of school. She's here, so we're on a girls' trip.
That's the best kind, girls
Yeah, it
trips.
is.
I know you love girls. Let's talk first about kind of your latest project.
Okay.
Sneex. Because I think why so many women adore you is for not only the products you've created, but you have this fearlessness about you. And we all have ideas about things that we want to do, but sometimes executing on them is difficult. How did the idea Sneex come about? How's it going?
So Sneex came about because I have worn high heels and they hurt my feet so bad. And I am always looking as I go through life of like, what isn't great? Why isn't it great? How long has it been this way? When's the last time this got an iteration or was evolved? And who's been making it? And our high heels have been made by men for centuries, and they aren't wearing them. So there hasn't been a lot of emphasis on how we feel in the product. It's been all about how we look, which has been the fashion industry as a whole. It is changing, which is so inspiring and exciting. The same thing inspired me to do Spanx. Like, I couldn't figure out what to wear under white pants, and so I was trying to solve my own undergarment issue and realized all men were making our undergarments, which was really shocking. Never had occurred to me. And they weren't wearing it. And if they were, they weren't admitting it. So it was like, how am I going to find somebody in this factory who can relate to me? But anyway, Sneex came from my own personal need. It always does. I don't have big focus groups. It's like, do I want this product? Will it fill a hole in my closet, my life? And the answer was yes. So I actually set out to invent and create the world's most comfortable stiletto. I spent 4 years. I took 2 girls on the Spanx team. They were both innovators in shapewear and bras. Of course, All three of us knew nothing about how to make a shoe, which I actually really like because then you're destined to do it differently if you have no idea how it's supposed to be done. But a lot of us, when we're doing things that we don't know how it's supposed to be done, our self-doubt will become too loud and it'll stop us from doing it. But that's where real innovation happens. If you have the courage to just keep going, I don't know how to do this, but it's not being done the way I want as a consumer. So let me honor this voice that's coming into my head about this. And so after 4 years, Norah, of us working on it, several trips to Italy, it didn't get to where I needed it to be. It was more comfortable than any other high heel. I wanted it to look like a traditional stiletto. I did not set out to make a shoe that looked like Sneex. And I looked at the team, which was 2 women, and I said, guys, it's not good enough to launch a company and a brand around or to introduce this to women.
And this is after 4 years.
4 years. And many trips to Italy, begging a bunch of the men in all the factories, working really hard to try to create this. It was better, but when I create something, especially if I'm gonna launch a company around it, I have this thing where I say it needs to be at least 10x better than anything else out there. So that's my test for myself. And they were upset. We were all 3 crying. And I was like, we gave it a go. I really worked hard with you guys on this. And at that last second, I said, I don't know why this has been so hard. I just want my high heel to feel like my sneaker. Like it's the year 20, whatever year it was then. We put a man on the moon. Now I can't even say that. I have to say we shot a go-kart from Earth to Mars and we're driving it by remote control from Earth. Like what? Why can't we create a comfortable high heel? So in that moment that I said that, we pivoted and I said, hold on a minute before we give up completely. I went home into my closet. I cut my sneaker in half and I glued it to the back of my high heel that I cut in half. And I hobbled around the house and was like, could this work? Would this be so weird looking? What would happen if I did this? And then we started making that, and that took 6 more years. The pandemic happened, but there was a lot of starting and stopping. And then we got it to where it did make a 10x difference in my own life because I love to wear heels but had stopped wearing them. And especially for me, I wanted kind of the look of something more casual and like going out to dinner in jeans and a cute top with my husband. I didn't always want to be in a pointy-toed heel that was killing my foot, and I didn't always want to be in a sneaker. Didn't make me feel like my best self when I would go out to dinner. So this filled the perfect void for me.
Yes, and for many of us. And I have teenage daughters, and they've now gotten to the point by the time they're seniors in high school, they wear their short, cute dresses to whatever night it is, and then they wear
Sneakers.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I do not blame them. I mean, I have foot issues from wearing heels as long as I did. My mom has really bad foot issues. And yeah, it was frustrating that no one, and I had been publicly saying this, Norah, for like over a decade, you guys. Everyone would interview me and go, so what's next for Sara Blakely? And I'd say, well, I'd love to invent a comfortable high heel. Like I kept putting it out in the universe thinking someone's going to do this. And then it didn't happen. I'm hobbling around in heels. I'm at the point now where I'm like, when am I going to wear a sneaker to a nice event? Like this has gotten bad. My choices based on my foot pain are so limited. And I asked the universe for a sign, which I always ask the universe for a sign. And I just said, hey, universe, like, am I supposed to be the one to do this? Because it hasn't happened and I've been putting it out there for a while. And then 1 or 2 days later, I flipped on your show, CBS Mornings. It's you and Gayle King sitting there. And randomly, I was running out the door to Spanx. 2 seconds, get to see the news. And Gayle is interviewing a shoe designer.
Christian Louboutin.
Yeah, you said it, not me. And I was like, wait, this is weird. I just asked for a sign about high heels. Like, this isn't typical that a shoe designer is being interviewed on the morning news.
Yeah.
And it was my sign.
Yeah.
It was my sign. Can I just say?
Yeah.
I've been a little hesitant to say this, but it's public. You can Google it. Gayle lifted up her shoe. She had it on. She picked it up from under the table. She held it up, and she said, Christian, this shoe is amazing. It is a work of art, which they are. And she said, but I can tell you by the end of the day, I might be crippled. And I was, as a product person who cares so deeply about how my customers feel, I'm waiting for him to go, I know, we're working on it. And he looked at Gail and he said, I do not want my shoes to be comfortable. If my shoes are comfortable, I take it as an insult. And I went, okay. Got it. Thanks, universe.
How many people, and this can be true with Spanx and Sneex too, how many people said, no, not a good idea? How many people said, not going to work?
I mean, so many. I sold fax machines door to door for 7 years when I graduated from college. So I had been told no for a living. I had been kicked out of office buildings for a living. People would rip up my business card maybe 5 times a week and say, get out of our office. So I had training in overcoming no. And when I started trying to make it, everyone just, especially with Spanx, it was like, I don't get it. Hosiery's meant to be seen on the leg. Who are you? You want to like make it under the clothes? What? I don't get it. We've been making it the same way for 100 years. And I kept going, I know, but I want your material. Your material is like second skin, and it would make a great undergarment, because our undergarments right now, shapewear is really thick, it's really hot, and it adds bulk under our clothes. And I was looking for a smooth canvas under a lot of my lighter clothes for especially spring and summer, and it was very foreign to them, so they kept saying no. And I have $5,000 in savings set aside to do this. I have my lucky red backpack from college. I took a week off of work and drove around North Carolina and cold called. They didn't even know I was coming. I didn't even know. I knocked on the door, came in the factories, and was like, hi, I'm Sara. I have this invention that I'd love to have you help me make. I mean, it was crazy, really. I stayed in these hotels by myself, and they always asked me the same 3 questions. They'd be like, and you are? And I'd go, Sara Blakely. And they'd go, and you're with? And I'd be like, Sara Blakely. And you're financially backed by? And I go, Sara Blakely. And they'd be like, so nice to meet you. Good luck. And a lot of them escorted me out. But I hear no a lot, and you will hear no a lot. But if you feel like your intention is pure and you want to do this also for other people, like I felt frustrated that people weren't making better products for women. So it didn't feel like it was just about me. It felt collective. And that gave me courage that I, just didn't know I could access to keep calling on these doors. And 20 years later, you guys, I got the same resistance all throughout Italy and Spain.
After you'd already been this enormous success.
They did not care. I mean, the first factory that started helping me make Sneex fired me after 6 months. They're like, it cannot be done. And then I went to another factory, started all over. 8 months in, they gave up. They're like, this is not the way it's supposed to be done. The industry is so draconian, I couldn't believe it.
What do you do do you ever get discouraged? I think that's like, do you get discouraged?
Yes.
Who do you talk to? How do you regain confidence? How do you keep going?
So I get discouraged and have self-doubt get really loud. I was talking to my daughter this morning in our hotel room, and I said, Tepper, she goes, Mommy, nothing scares Mommy. That's why you're able to do this. I said, hold on a minute, honey. Everything scares Mommy. Everything scares me. I'm scared because I got a little stomach ache in the hotel before I came here, and she's like, "Why do you have a stomach ache?" I'm like, "I'm nervous." She's like, "What?" So the difference is, I think when people achieve things in life that we look at and think, "Wow, that's amazing. I would love something like that to happen in my life." There isn't the absence of fear. Like, I think a lot of us think, well, they must not have the same self-doubts. They must not be afraid. They're so afraid, and they have a lot of self-doubt. They've just learned to manage the voice. Mm-hmm. They have learned to manage it. So if there's anything that I can encourage you guys to spend time on is your own mindset. I started listening to Wayne Dyer, who is a motivational, inspirational speaker. He was really a progressive. He was talking about mindset in the 80s.
This is back when we had cassette tapes.
Yes, we had cassette tapes. And my mom and dad got separated. And my dad came into my bedroom and handed me, before he moved out, this cassette tape series called How to Be a No Limit Person by Wayne Dyer. And it was this 40-year-old man with a bushy mustache with no hair. And I'm like, so here is why I listened to it, because I think most 16-year-olds would have chucked that in the bottom of their closet. I was hurting, and I was in a really dark time in high school. My parents were separating. I was sad. I had just been involved in a friend who had a tragic death in high school. So I always say in life, there's always a hidden blessing in the dark moments. There is. And my hidden blessing was I put those cassette tapes in. And then I started to cry because I thought I've just spent 16 years of my life being taught what to think. And no one has ever taught me how to think. And the light bulb was just like, wait, what? I can teach my thoughts to respond in a way that will propel my life forward instead of hold me back. So I started studying through Wayne, manifesting what you want, visualization, law of attraction, not caring what other people think about you, which as a 16-year-old is all you care about, not fearing failure. And so I listened to these cassette tapes, Norah, so much. I had them all memorized. And listen, nobody wanted to end up in my car after a party at Clearwater High. Okay? Nobody. Everyone was listening to Bon Jovi and Madonna, and they get in my car, and it was like, what do you really want for your life? They're like, Sara. And then fast forward 15 years later, I graduate from Clearwater High, and I end up on the cover of Forbes, and all my friends from high school, they texted me, and all they wrote was, damn, should have listened to that shit.
And by the way, Sara and I were talking about this, it doesn't end because since we're both in midlife, your life changes again in many ways in midlife, and you have to continue to sort of reinvent yourself. But also you have this question of, what do I want now? And I said, I was listening to someone who talked about you're in this first 50 years of your life. This is for men and women too. You're in the striving phase, and then something happens in the second phase of your life, and you say it's
arriving. And I am really uncomfortable with arriving. I was telling Norah, I don't know, this energy is so, I feel disoriented. I'm trying to get comfortable with it. I was, someone that I talked to about midlife said the first part of our life is proving, oftentimes proving to ourselves, proving to, whoever. And then the second half becomes improving, where you really go inward and you start to say, what drove me in the first half of my life? Is that what should drive me in the second half? What do I really want? And you start excavating more of yourself in this next chapter, because there's been books written about it that, I think there's a title out there that says what worked then doesn't necessarily work now. And that's true in life. We're always evolving. We're always reinventing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I also want to ask you about dating.
Yes. Dating. Dating.
Because you got married at what age?
I got married at 37.
And you had 4 kids starting at what age?
I had my first child at 38. I have 4 children, 3 boys, and my baby's a girl who's here. Tepper's 9. Mm.
And what do you think what we should be thinking about when we think about a life partner or a spouse?
It's a great question. So I dated for a long time, obviously. I didn't get married till I was 37. And for all of my 20s and almost all of my 30s, every wedding I went to, everywhere I went, the only thing was hey, when are you going to get married? Are you dating anyone? I mean, if I stood in line for a bad vodka and cranberry at a wedding one more time where some well-meaning woman says to me, he's going to show up, someone's going to figure out you're a good catch. I'm like, wait, what? I can't be single by choice? It just meant someone hadn't chosen me yet, and everyone took pity on me everywhere I went. I was like, I'm okay, it's good. But my dad gave me really interesting advice one time. He said, Sara, marriage, who you marry it is the most important decision of your life, but it should be the easiest. And I was like, what? If it's the most important decision, it's not going to be the easiest. I'm going to have a pro and con list. I'm going to really think it through. He's like, no, you won't. And so that really meant something to me. And I met Jesse later in life, and I did know right away. I was like, oh, he's in my movie. This guy's in my movie. I could just tell. And then I would say the most important thing in picking a life partner is find a cheerleader. Find the person who is going to cheer you on the most. My husband is literally my biggest cheerleader. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen friends of mine happen to, super, super amazing women with tons and tons of potential, they choose the wrong life partner and they spend the rest of their life dimming their light to make that relationship work. And if you have to dim your light to make the relationship work, it's not the right relationship. So I'm so happy I waited for my cheerleader. And Norah, I'll tell you, like, for all these years that I was dating men, my success, they would tell me that it didn't bother them, that it wasn't an issue. And then almost always it became an issue. And I had this happen over and over again where I was like, this is an issue actually. And it was hurtful and it was hard and there were so many breakups that I had. And then when I was engaged to Jesse and I didn't talk much about our businesses or our success. In fact, Jesse was so clueless about Spanx. He asked me if they were sold at Barnes & Noble. I'm like, no, Spanx are not sold at Barnes & Noble,
And
honey.
he knew what.
I mean, seriously. And then he's such a guy's guy. I married a New Yorker. He calls me Sarah. My parents are like, I can't believe you married someone who calls you Sarah. Anyway, he's so New York, and he's such a guy's guy. And he was struggling so much when we first started dating to tell people what I did. And then he was like, what's going on? Like, women meet you and start crying. What are they crying about? He's like, you're like a beetle. What's happening? I don't understand. I'm like, honey, it's emotional. You know, I make a product that makes women feel really good. And, you know, they're inspired to do their own thing. Anyway, one time at a cocktail party, I overheard him and he was like, I don't know, man. Like, she's like the Michael Jordan of underwear. And all the guys were like, whoa, that's amazing. So anyway, I was engaged to him. We hadn't really talked about much. I was like, I think I need to tell him something, you know? I was so nervous because it had affected every other relationship that I'd been in, and I really wanted this one to work. I really felt so, you know, great about Jesse. And we were at dinner at the Upper West Side in New York, and I said, honey, I need to tell you something. And he looked so terrified. Like, I think he thought maybe I was going to end the engagement. And I go, this is exactly what I said, and my heart was racing so hard, ladies, just to show you what it feels like for women. I said, I think I make more money than you think I do.
Oh, that is so awesome. Oh, that is so awesome.
And I'll never forget, he had spaghetti like hanging out of his mouth, and he slurped the rest of the spaghetti up, and he got a little bit teary, and he goes, couldn't have happened to a nicer person, and kept eating his spaghetti. And that was it. Never anything. Just, yeah. Marry your cheerleader.
Yeah. Don't let anyone ever dim your light.
No.
Girlfriends are so important to you.
Girlfriends are so important to me.
Yeah.
That's other advice. Ladies, hold your girlfriends close, invest in them, check on them. You're going to have chapters in your life where you're going to have little babies running around. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be in and out of relationships that really take your attention and energy. Throughout your life, invest in the women that you have and hold them close. Because, listen, my girlfriends are so incredible. They're critical to my well-being. They're kind of like my emotional board. You know, life can be really hard. And I have these girlfriends that have known me since I'm little. And Norah knows this. Every year on my birthday, I take my childhood friends who are all working moms, never take any time for themselves, are always in charge of everything. I whisk them away on a trip, and it's a surprise trip every year. They don't know where they're going. The only thing I tell them is hot, cold, or passport. And we have done this. This is our 19th year. And it's so much fun. And, you know, so that's what I always say, too. People say, like, what's the best part of success? I'm like, oh, my God, spoiling the people you love. Like, I think also women have an interesting, complicated relationship with money. I think that money is fun to make, it's fun to spend, and it's fun to give away. And money is energy. It flows to you, it flows away from you. And the way that because I think a lot of people have, self-worth issues around money. I don't know who modeled money for you or gave you your money narrative, but I invite you to be really pay attention to your money narrative. Like, do you feel like you don't deserve a bunch of abundance? Do you feel like just a certain amount's enough? The way that I see it is there's so many people out there, men, that have so much money, okay? And I think, well, if they're giving out money, I'm a really good person to have a bunch of it because I'm going to do a lot of good things with it.
And how have you helped women grow their own businesses, helped women in need? I know you've been doing a lot since the LA fires, for instance.
Yeah. Well, I look for opportunities to invest in women-owned businesses. I'm always, wanting to fund or help fund other women's dreams. So there's just been things I've done throughout, like during the pandemic, I gave $5 million to 1,000 women. Well, I gave 1,000 women $5,000 each to help sustain their small business. And that was great that I was able to do that. And, just been the LA fires, reached out to a bunch of female entrepreneurs whose businesses burned and helped them. It's shocking that 2% of all giving goes to women and girls. Think about that. 98% of all charitable giving is going somewhere else. And women and girls make up half the world, and we're doing really important things. We have important dreams. So I started my foundation almost right when I started Spanx. I started setting aside a portion of the profits of Spanx very early on, even when I was working out of my apartment.
We're here at Vital Voices, which of course supports women and girls all over the world.
Yes.
Not only through support, but also through example. And Sara, women around the world know your story and see you as a role model, as a beacon of light, as someone who's pushed through fear and doubt to create something. How do you view that when someone tells you that? And how do you want to grow it?
Well, it happened to me today before I walked into this podcast and this live audience. I got to meet several women from different parts of the world and America. And one woman in particular, I think she's here, is from Afghanistan. There she is. And she said that she watched videos of me in school in Afghanistan, and that the videos that she saw gave her the vision that things could happen for women and that there was more possibility for women. And that was like very emotional for me to think about that. Because I grew up on a beach in Florida and, wow, it's amazing. So I get to meet those women and I just want to keep amplifying their voices and their mission. That's why I wanted to be connected to Vital Voices. The fact that Vital Voices is finding these women around the world that are change makers in their communities and are leaders in their communities, I couldn't think of a better thing that I would want to fund than that.
It's a good reminder that you never realize or know how powerful what you do in any way can inspire someone, lift them up.
So true. It's remarkable. So whenever you're holding yourself back, whenever you have self-doubt, think of the people that you are meant to inspire. Think about, well, if I make this choice, who might I inspire? You just never know. And it's always worth it to make the choice. Fortune favors the bold, and the bigger the risks you take in life, the bigger reward. And we're only here one time, as far as we know. So this is not a dress rehearsal. Every chance you get to make the scarier decision, to take the risk, do it. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a great story to tell. You're going to have a great story to tell. So go for it.
Sara, you have great ideas and you're an incredible entrepreneur. But sometimes there's a lot of people who are very creative, who are not great leaders. And the world needs all of them.
Yep.
So what's your style of leadership? How'd you learn to become a leader?
So that's interesting. I had never been trained in leadership. I didn't have a mentor in leadership. I went from selling fax machines door to door to owning a company, which was a very bizarre transition. I used to sit in the cubicle and complain about the boss, and then all of a sudden I was the boss. I was like, this is weird. What was the question? I do this all the time,
no,
you
no,
guys.
no.
I have 4 kids.
How did you become a leader? Like, how'd you
Yes.
learn to become a leader?
Right.
Because obviously you're creative and an entrepreneur, but then being a boss is hard.
Being a boss is hard. It can be very lonely.
Yeah.
It can be very lonely. That's why your girlfriends really matter. I like to tell people, as soon as you can afford to, hire your weaknesses. So if you're a creative type and you don't, which I'm more of a creative type, and you don't want to be running an operation, partner with someone who is a good operator, find them very early on. At Spanx, I literally found someone to run the day-to-day business. And I just had dinner with an entrepreneur the other night. I was in Nashville for a friend's book, Amy Griffin, who just launched a book called The Tell. And anyway, this entrepreneur and I were talking, and I could see that she's very successful already, but she's still on her way. And she's very burned out. And I looked at her and I said, "What are your 2 superpowers?" Well, like, if you had to name 2 superpowers, what are they in your business? And she named them. And I said, "What percentage of your day are you doing your superpowers?" And she got tears in her eyes and she said, 5%. And I said, "Okay, you're going to burn out. And this needs to be the next thing you do, is find someone who can do the parts of the business that someone else can do." Because every founder has something in them that they are the best at what they do. This is why you created the business. And I went through chapters at Spanx where I got disconnected from product and I was not happy. I was burning out. You know, I forgot the reason I started it was my love of making things for women. You know, the business got bigger and bigger, and I let myself get more and more removed from the why I did it. And I would sit in an office and just people would bring me the worst problems or the most complicated problems all day. And I'm like, this isn't fun. Like, I'm not happy
So
anymore.
what do you think there's a difference between men and women in this regard? My sense is that there is that women feel like when they reach these positions of power, like they're supposed to be able to do it all and do it all perfectly. Whereas men may not view that way. Whereas the right answer is, you can hire around these problems, right? Why is it that women feel like they have to do everything perfectly, solve every problem within their company?
I don't know, but that is a recipe for burnout. And so get really good at delegating. I delegated what my weaknesses were as early as I could. I knew I wasn't the operator of the business. I knew I wasn't the manager that was going to manage a bunch of people and hire them and manage them. I knew my 2 superpowers were like being the face of the brand, because I didn't have money to advertise and I couldn't delegate that to anybody else, and then inventing the products, which was in my heart and soul. And so as much as I could, I had so many people. And this is another thing that shocks people a lot. For my whole, maybe not in the first 2 years when I was really small and there were like 3 people in my apartment, but for pretty much the whole journey of Spanx, I had 1 direct report. Which doesn't mean that's your journey, but I just like sharing that because I didn't even realize how rare that is. I figured it out as I saw other founders' reactions. I always had 1 person that was my right-hand person that was running the business, and that 1 person reported to me, and then everybody else on the leadership team reported to that person. And I had dotted lines to everybody. I'd interact with everybody. But that gave me, because I am a very empathic, creative person, that gave me the freedom to keep accessing the downloads that I needed to get around product ideas and inventions.
I haven't been to Harvard Business School, but that could be like a Harvard Business School study. Seriously, about your form of leadership. Yeah. How well it's worked for you
For me,
and to build the company that you've done. You've talked about this, and it's even before it came up recently. Mark Zuckerberg talked about masculine energy.
Oh, yeah.
You've actually talked about the difference between, am I right, about masculine and feminine
100%.
energy?
Yes.
Tell me your views on it.
So my view is that we all have masculine and feminine energy in us, right? I don't even really see it as gender. I see it as the energy that we hold, and that the feminine energy on the planet has been very suppressed and very squashed for like 3,000 years. And
Since the beginning of time.
no.
Oh, okay.
It used to be different, Norah.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, the last around 3,000 years, the feminine's been very squashed, and I think we are suffering as a whole because of it. I think if the feminine could be nourished and supported and elevated, that it's about balance. It's not about one dominating the other. If there's balance, then the world's going to heal itself in so many ways that we're hurting. And so in my lifetime, I'm like, I don't know how long my life's going to be. I would like to elevate the feminine and use my life in that way. And I know a lot of leaders of organizations. It depends on the person. Some male leaders are very balanced in their masculine and feminine energy, and I can see that and I can feel it. And I can give you two examples that come to mind. One is Hamdi, who started Chobani, and Richard Branson from Virgin. They come to mind. And then I have friends that are male leaders of organizations that are like so masculine in their energy. It's like war. Like, we are going to dominate. We are going to crush the competition. We are here to win at all costs. And
their names are, I'm just kidding.
I'll tell you later. And so anyway, I'm so impressed by those men also. Like, I interviewed Hamdi one time at Spanx, and he actually gives his company a gender, and he said, my company is female. Which I had never really thought about, a company having a gender. I believe in souls of companies for sure, but that was interesting to me.
So then what is feminine energy?
Feminine energy to me is intuition, vulnerability, empathy. Those are probably the main things that I think about when I think of like my feminine superpower. Intuition for sure. Intuition's not on a spreadsheet. I wish that it was. It's not taught in business school, which, by the way, I never went to business school. I'd never taken a business class in my life, nothing. Not an accounting class, nothing. I was like really trying to figure this out as I went.
You did fabulous.
Thank you. But I just want everyone to know, it's okay to not know. Like, I did not know anything. I mean, when I tell you nothing, my first orders of Spanx, I went to, I mailed them, regular mail. People started calling my apartment, which was my customer service hotline. I'd be like in the bathtub. I'd be in my bed. I'm like, Spanx, customer service, And they'd be like, I didn't get my Spanx. I'm like, I shipped it to you. They're like, well, did you send it? Like, is there a tracking number? I'm like, oh, there's tracking numbers? Got it. So then I started FedExing the Spanx so I could track it. I didn't even know. I literally mailed them in regular envelopes to people.
That reminds me of the story. What was the big magazine that came to do a story on you, and you had to set up your office? And
it was Oprah.
Oh, it was Oprah.
It was the Oprah show.
That's right. The Oprah show came. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. So I get a call from Oprah. I just started Spanx. I'm in my apartment. I had just quit selling fax machines door to door, and the show calls me and goes, Oprah chose Spanx as her favorite product, and I'm like, oh my God. And they go, Oprah doesn't normally feature people on this show. It's all about the product, but she heard you're a young girl taking on the billion-dollar industry by yourself, and that she wants to highlight you. So we're going to fly down there and get your story. I go, great. They show up, Norah, with clipboards and big lights, and they're so official. And they go, we discussed on the plane, we want to film you in your headquarters. I was like, oh, hi, welcome. You're here. And they looked at each other. They were like, oh, okay. And then they said, and we also want to film you having a staff meeting. And I was like, oh, hold on a minute. And I called all my friends and said, can you please come to my apartment right now and look like you work for me? And then I called Connie, who I'd met at Mailboxes, etc., and said, Connie, will you please come over? And she goes, I'm on my way. And we sat on the floor of my apartment in a circle, and that was my staff meeting for the Oprah Winfrey Show.
So there's a little bit of the fake it till you make it.
Well, listen, that's so interesting. Yes, but I also think using vulnerability is such a superpower. Like, I was totally fine to be, I'm trying to figure this out. Can you help me? I would always stay really centered to the why I was doing it. Way more emphasis, guys, on the why than the what. The why makes people want to become your champion and not just your customer. it's purpose-driven. You'll start to attract the right kind of people when you're centered on the why. But for me, it was always like, I just couldn't figure out what to wear under these white pants. I'm really frustrated that the people making all of our undergarments aren't really thinking about this. I've took my $5,000. I don't know what I'm doing. And people show up and help you in the right moments in the right way.
So there are many women and men that are here, and those that will be listening to this podcast, I know that probably want some practical advice from you, and you've just sort of talked about that, the why. And so if they're saying at home, like, I have this great idea for a nonprofit, or I have a great idea for a profitable business, Sara, what steps should I take? What do I do? And I can see a lot of young women with notepads right now, too, wanting to write down. What advice would you give them?
The first thing I do is get so clear on why I'm different. Why am I better? Every entrepreneur starts their business because they've either come up with something that doesn't already exist or they have a passion to make it much better. So I get real clear on that. And then I mentioned I really want it to be exponential. Like if it's just kind of a slightly bit better, you could still do it. It's going to make your journey harder. So really sit and say, why am I different? Like, what am I going to offer that isn't already out there? How am I going to make the customer's life experience in this situation so much better, exponentially better? So I spend time on that. I always try to make what it is that I am going to sell in a very small quantity, as small as possible, or I do a few prototypes myself that if I can, and then I give it to friends and family and get feedback from them. I am my customer, so I get, very clear on what I would want. And then I start small and I dream big and I scale fast. And I never got ahead of myself. I never took outside funding. I think that, there's a lot of this feeling around raising money that means you're making it somehow. And that doesn't. That means you're giving up a lot of your company. And if you need to give up a lot of your company to make what you're going to do work, by all means do it. But so many founders give up more than they need to early on. And I remember when I first started out, every room I was in was always with a bunch of men. There weren't very many women in 2000 doing this. But it was like, I've raised 20 million, I've raised 50 million, I've raised 100 million. And I just remember thinking like, I haven't raised anything. I'm the loser in the room. Like, whoa. And they'd all kind of look at me like, yeah, whatever, And so many of those businesses come and go. They get really big and inflated really quickly, or it's not a great story for the founder. And I was okay to grow at the pace that I felt was right, and everything I could do myself or with a very small team, I did it. And you know what I found out? Even after Spanx grew and got money to be able to afford more people, I found that when you have less money to do something, the creative output is always almost better. And when you're scrappy, and so even once Spanx had money, I'd sit in the room and go, if we had no budget, what would we do? Because I'd always want to hear those ideas first, because those are great. And so that's what I would do.
That's good advice, right, everybody? It's really, really good advice. And then we've talked a little bit about this, but in addition to the kind of who, what, when, where, and why of building a business, how do you build a support system for the the stuff that's not on the spreadsheet, the times when you doubt yourself, feel not worthy, or just having a bad day?
Yeah, friends. So my support system was always my mother. My mom is like my first call that I make. She is so nurturing and loving and gave me so much courage because I knew she was like a safe house for me to go back to no matter what. And my mom was the mom who was equally as proud of me for getting fax machine salesperson of the month as she was like being on the cover of Forbes. I mean, I get the same response for everything. That's nice, honey. It's like, no, Mom, this is like Forbes. And she's like, that's nice. So anyway, she's just been there for me. And so my mom, a few friends, and it is really interesting when you are the boss and you are the owner, because I would always, you feel this responsibility to not unload on the people around you. So it's more important than ever. I joined a group called YEO, which is now called EO. So there are organizations in the country of startup entrepreneurs that you can become a part of. And they put me in a forum, which is a small group.
YPO is another one.
YPO, I'm in YPO also, but YEO is more really startup entrepreneurs. Like I think you have to have $1 million in revenue to be in YEO. And I got put in a forum, 10 men and me, no surprise. And they became like my brothers. I've met with these guys once a month for 25 years now. We have to go on a trip once a year. It's hilarious. 10 men and me. I've been on a trip. I feel like Jane Goodall, except for, I really do, except for,
Did they know you?
I'm not observing gorillas in their natural habitat. I get to observe men in their natural habitat. They forget I'm there. It's fascinating. Every woman should get to spend time with a group of men. I'm like, whoa. Anyway, early on, I would tell them all the time. They'd bring up business stuff, and I'd say, I don't know. I'm gonna go talk to the universe about that. I'm gonna put that out there, and I'm gonna drive around in my car and get a download about that. And they were like, whoa. They all told me they took bets of how long I would last in business. And then, and then maybe 4 years in, Spanx started, really rocking and rolling and was doing really well. And do you know that each one of these conservative male business owners from Georgia pulled me aside separately and said, how do you talk to the universe, Sara? So they have been a big support too, because early on, like I would have these issues come up at Spanx, and I can't turn to my right or left and ask an employee or cry to an employee and go, what the hell do I do right now? So we would have this safe forum to share problems, and I learned a lot from them.
So how do you speak to the universe?
So I get this is a great question. For me, I found out where I get downloads, and everyone here does. It happens when you daydream. So if I asked each one of you right now, where in your life do you daydream? And how much time are you allocating in your life to daydream? And I am not talking about when you go through your checklist. Like a lot of people go, oh, on my morning run, I'm like thinking about everything I have to do that day or that week. I'm like, no, that's not the space. The space is, where does your mind wander? Because that is when you're going to get the downloads. That's where you're going to get the connection to yourself and your higher self, or whatever you want to call it, that is so, and pay attention to them. They're going to come in whispers. You're going to have this random thought like ice cream. Okay, why did I just think about ice cream? I don't know, that was weird. And then something else, and then something else. And so pay really close attention, because they're all gifts coming to you. And my mind wanders in the car. So I identified that, and I actually created time in the car that my friends call my fake commute, because I lived 6 minutes from Spanx, but I would get in the car and drive an hour aimlessly around town before I went to the office. So where does your mind wander? It could be in the shower. Like for Einstein, it was when he was shaving. And then just make sure you're putting that time in your life. And it's getting harder and harder, you guys, because when you're distracted, it's harder to get to hear the downloads. It's so much harder. And now we have phones. And I mean, even I was getting in an elevator. There's a TV in the elevator. Like, there's not really much about society right now that is encouraging us to be alone with our thoughts. So that's how I talk to the universe. I get really quiet, and I'm very specific. Mm-hmm. I say to the universe, I need a sign for this. And I'll even say, and it can't be a rainbow. Like, it just can't be generic. It has to be like really obvious that this is a sign. Mm-hmm. And then I'll get the sign. And I ask a lot when I'm trying to figure out yes or no. Like, should I do this? Should I not? I'm nervous. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel scared. And so by getting these winks from the universe, it has felt like I had all the board members I needed on my side. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm Sarah in my apartment going against Haynes and Sara Lee. Are you kidding me? But I get these winks from the universe that I asked for, and I go, oh, okay. I'm on a path that I'm meant to be on, and this is bigger than me, and I have to trust this.
Well, thank you for sharing your universe with us,
yes,
Sara Blakely.
Thank you, Norah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. So great to be here with you guys.
This was a great conversation.
It was.
Thank you, and a great way to kick off the Vital Voices podcast. I'm Norah O'Donnell. Thanks for joining us. I hear the next podcast coming up is going to be really good too. Stay tuned.
So good. Thank you.